Middle East crisis arises as President Nasser of Egypt tells a wildly cheering crowd in Alexandria that Egypt has seized the internationally owned Suez Canal. His announcement touches off a rapid series of reprisals and counter-reprisals. Britain freezes all Egyptian funds, and Egypt retaliates with the same measures. France lodges a bitter protest and suggests military action. The 85-year-old waterway, of which the United States is the second biggest user, brings a three-power meeting in London to discuss the biggest threat this year has posed to world peace.
From Alexandria, Egypt, Mobitone News brings you the latest incident to upset the chancelleries of the free world. President Nasser delivering his fiery speech telling of his nationalization of the Suez Canal. A seizure from private interests that the Egyptian says is his answer to the West for refusing to finance the Aswan Dam. It's a situation fraught with implications. But undeterred, President Nasser raises his country's flag to symbolize his action. And although his followers hail him and carry him triumphantly on their shoulders, in London, Paris, and Washington, the fate of the strategic waterway causes grave concern. A lifeline between the East and West, the free world does not want it dependent on the Egyptian government, which sends U.S. Undersecretary of State Murphy to London, where he is interviewed on the crisis by British pressmen.
Have you brought any plan with you for action against Egypt?
I can only say that we are going to engage in these conversations with our friends here and explore the matter. We haven't got to the point as yet of specific proposals.
What do you think of the idea of using force to protect Western projects in the Middle East?
Really no comment on that at this stage.
Does your government now regret its decision not to help finance the Aswan Dam?
We have no regrets, no.
Arriving in the Egyptian capital from Alexandria, where he proclaimed his seizure of the Suez Canal Company, President Nasser finds Cairo's population in a veritable nationalistic frenzy. An acclaiming multitude which escorts him like a hero to the presidential palace, where he delivers another fiery speech in answer to opposition to his provocative action. Action which brings U.S. Secretary of State Dulles flying to London, where the English wait in the rain to see another momentous conference get underway at 10 Downing Street. It's a three-power meeting with France the third party, and the talks tend to favor international rule for the canal, with a bid to Russia to take a part. In Cairo, President Nasser's top aide, Wing Commander Ali Sabri, explains Egypt's challenge to the West by its seizure of the Suez Canal, but pays no heed to protests as his country drafts plans for a general mobilization. A threatening gesture that sees French, British, and U.S. forces in the Mediterranean spring to activity, as here at Toulon, the great French naval base, where a fleet has gotten ready to steam Suezward. While in England, naval reservists converge on Plymouth to man 3 aircraft carriers that Britain is dispatching to the troubled waterway. A precautionary measure in the event of Egypt's refusal to attend the 24-nation meeting called to internationalize the seized canal. Regiments of paratroopers, too, are on the move, as here at Portsmouth. For each of the 3 British flat tops sailing to the Mediterranean will be loaded with these most modern of fighting units, as the West, challenged again, faces the facts.
The Suez Canal, never far from the news in its 87 years of history, hits the headlines like a bombshell, when, without a hint of warning, Egypt's Premier, Colonel Nasser, announces that his country is taking it over. The profit is to be used to complete the Aswan Dam, the huge project from which Britain and America recently withdrew their offers of financial aid. 2 years ago, Britain agreed to withdraw her troops. The canal would become Egypt's property in 1968. Mr. Anthony Head signed for Britain, Nasser for Egypt. Now, Nasser tears the agreement up. The canal, he says, is nationalized forthwith. Shareholders will be paid current stock exchange prices. the £36 million annual profit will become Egyptian revenue. Britain kept her side of the pact. She withdrew the troops which had guarded for so long this most vital of the world's waterways. No sooner had the last British soldier gone than Nasser triumphantly hoisted the Egyptian flag over the canal's own base. Now he has seized the canal itself, and Britain suffers most, for she is not only the main shareholder, but also the main user. Egyptian crowds enthusiastically acclaim Nasser, but Egypt's arbitrary action has provoked a major crisis. Egyptian President Nasser says goodbye to Australian Premier Robert Menzies and his colleagues. But in spite of the smiles and the friendly handshakes, Egypt's answer to the 18-nation plan for international control of the Suez Canal is still a flat refusal. Mr. Menzies flies back to London with the disturbing knowledge that although he and his committee did their best, their mission has failed. Interviewed at the airport, Mr. Menzies tells how the 18-nation plan was explained in great detail to President Nasser, so that he should be left in no doubt as to its implications.
And the answer to our proposals, after long arguments, detailed arguments, arguments to and fro, the answer is that Egypt will have nothing to do with any peaceful solution of the canal issue which doesn't leave Egypt the sole and undisputed master of the whole of the operations of the canal, subject only to the 1888 Convention, which, in a broad way, guarantees the freedom of traffic. A freedom, of course, which could be set on one side with the greatest of ease by political management. A political management which we sought to avoid by having a guaranteed non-political management.
Most vitally concerned in the future of the canal are Britain and France. And to Downing Street, to hear the Menzies report, come French Premier Guy Mollet and Foreign Minister Christian Pineau. Sir Anthony Eden and Mr. Selwyn Lloyd greet them at the door of number 10. These two governments face one of the most vital decisions since the war. And as night falls, Mr. Menzies arrives with a report which will help them to make it. For the first stage of the crisis is over. Both sides have made their position clear. And now it is Nasser who makes the next move. He puts a plan for wider international talks to the United Nations. The scene changes. Will the atmosphere change too?